Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at audiblepodcast.com/Sorgatron Media. Over 75,000 titles to choose from for your iPod, iPhone, or MP3 player.
I'm getting awesome, you're getting awesome, we're getting awesome, yeah, that's what I said now. I'm getting awesome, you're getting awesome, we're getting awesome, yeah, that's what I said.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first, not the very first, but the very first of this edition of the AwesomeCast. We'll explain that in a little bit. This is, as always, your host, Sorgatron, Mike Sorg right here. And on the line is Rob. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Some technical glitches, as go with podcasting. Of course, Rob is not on the video this week for you that have actually received us that way whenever we decide to get that up. But we got some stuff going on. Just a little background before we get into it and get into our guest here for this evening. Basically, we had the idea to throw together a tech podcast, tech media, whatever we can think of podcast. And me and Rob here were talking, and you had something up your sleeve here in the AwesomeCast, sir.
Yeah, it was, AwesomeCast was something I had done, 3-4 years ago, something like that. And it, kind of just fell apart because of a lot of technical problems, a lot of, scheduling problems, and we didn't really have a good focus. So it got abandoned, but now it's back because it's a pretty sweet name. So we got that going for us. And yeah, this is something I've been wanting to do just about since I moved to Pittsburgh nearly 2 years ago. So I'm glad it's coming together.
And then there was me with the concept but no name. He had the name, and it all worked out, right? So, yeah. Well, for those that don't know, kind of introduce ourselves for the first episode. Again, I'm Mike Sorg. I do the Sorgatron Media Wrestling Mayhem Show. The Music Fun Time is another podcast I started up. I've been doing this podcast thing for about 4 years. We're trying to get something together with SorgatronMedia.com as kind of to push all of this and all the other projects that are going around in my hemisphere, and get them all kind of on a network together. And just kind of in numbers, we can push something to get something forward, and break on through, right?
Right.
Day job, I am a video specialist and technologist is my recent title for multimedia training systems. So I do this in the day job too. So just I'm not in front of the camera in that regard. Or Rob, why don't you tell them a little about yourself?
I'm an everything kind of guy. My day job is I am a prototype designer and builder for a local inventions company. So I do engineering, industrial design, stuff like that. I write for Macworld.com. I'm a freelance photographer, freelance graphic designer, ran an IT business for like 5 years. And I do a lot of stuff, and I'm really busy, and it's kind of amazing that I have time to do this, but I'm here.
Awesome. And of course, you heard a little bit in the background there. I want to introduce our guest. We're going to try to get as much of a revolving kind of guest kind of thing as we can. We know a lot of people here in the social media scene in Pittsburgh and beyond, so we're hoping to kind of rope some of them into this project and just have some good conversations, really. And of course, that voice is Mike Pound joining us on the Skype line. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. Now that everything's working, of course.
Right.
So tell people what you do.
I think for the purposes of today's episode, I'm the designated grumpy old media guy.
So
I'm a newspaper reporter for a smaller paper in the Pittsburgh area. We are sort of tentatively getting involved with new media stuff after much prodding from the paper's owners, and I've been pretty heavily involved with that. So we're hopefully going to be able to offer some perspective on what we do sort of well so far, what we don't do so well, and what we can do. I wish I had a dime for every time I've been told that I work for a dying profession, because then I wouldn't have to worry about my profession dying anymore. But
that's fine. That's fine. Hey, you know what? You're one of the more progressive ones I know. in that area. So that's why
I
you're
hope
on
so.
the show.
I
That's why
hope
you're on the
so.
show. We've had some great conversations over some beers at the German Beer House. So I thought we'd bring some of them here. Well, right off the bat, I want to get into, we're going to try to cover a handful of the top stories of the week. We don't want to be talking about all the stuff that everybody else is, kind of overbearingly, because I know everybody gets sick of the Facebook and the iPad talk and everything. But okay, guess what we're covering the first episode here. So the first thing I have on the notes here, guys, is the Facebook privacy concerns. We can kind of talk a little bit more about it since it is our first time doing so. Of course, last Thursday, there was last Thursday, we got the day right, I think. I'm still pulling up the notes. Was the big press conference with Facebook, and they've redone the privacy notes. Now, I'm coming from I'm using Facebook. I don't expect Facebook to keep everything private. I'm not using it in a way that I'm worried about that. But I can understand how people are. I know, Mike, you have an opinion on that.
It's frustrating with the changes, and as far as technical difficulties and problems figuring it out, I don't have too much trouble because I've been using Facebook for a while. But it is far too complicated. Even with the changes from last week, it is still pretty tricky for someone who isn't immersed in this stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. And that coupled with the contempt that the Facebook folks seem to have for their customers. I don't know if you want to get into Mr. Zuckerberg's alleged comments that came out a couple weeks ago or not.
Go ahead. Go ahead a little bit.
I haven't seen this. I haven't seen a real hard confirmation of this, but he apparently had some not too kind words for Facebook users. Over the years, he's made comments about, well, these people are just giving me this stuff. Meaning, your private information, my private information, the pictures, contact info, blah, 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 blah. And I know Mike said at the outset that we're going to try to keep this a relatively clean podcast, so I can't refer directly to the language. But
we're going to try. We'll see how long that lasts. I have no promises, but we're going to attempt to have a clean podcast for a change.
It's frustrating. I mean, he has a license to print money. With the number of users that he has and the phenomenon that Facebook is, and it's disappointing that he would view us and view our privacy the way that they apparently do. The changes they made last week are nice, and it does make this a little bit easier. But boy, this should be a very, very simple thing for people to figure out, and so far it's not. It's not even with the changes they made last week. It's still a tough thing for someone who isn't dealing with this all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my biggest gripes with the new changes is that the average user doesn't know that they made changes. That's
a great point.
Yeah, there's you get a little pop-up that comes up at the top of the screen that'll say, hey, we've updated our thing and whatever, and it'll ask you about it. But it didn't seem like they actually presented it to happen. I haven't seen that screen that's supposed to inform you that the privacy options have changed yet, and I use Facebook every single day, which kind of bothers me. And a lot of people, I mean, it's a give and take as far as what Zuckerberg is doing and how he's treating people like fodder. I think his biggest problem is that Facebook was started with an idea of being very private, and then we were introduced into this highly social world that not many people saw coming, where people are willing to give away a whole lot of information, like considering that everything on Twitter except for DMs is completely public. And I think Zuckerberg and Facebook as a corporation is looking at all this information, seeing dollar signs and huge potential, and what they want to do is switch to this model of being public after being born out of privacy. And it's just going completely wrong as they mishandle the process.
Rob, you make a great point about people not knowing about the changes. And I actually, I don't think I looked at Facebook at all over the weekend. When I looked today, there is no notice about the changes until you go to the privacy settings section of your profile. I mean, it is that hidden, and you have to go through these layers before you can find what should be probably the most accessible part of your profile.
Yeah, and it's also that it's I actually just went to Facebook.com just now, and I saw there's a little blue box that comes up that says improved privacy controls figures. But I think I actually visit Facebook usually as a result of like links from my email and things, so I never look at like my main news feed. But as well as it being too complicated, they oh gosh, I had a point. I totally did. Oh, it's Instead of being apologetic and sort of doing a semi-lockdown with these new improved privacy controls, saying, look, we mishandled this in the beginning and then we changed things. So how about we start with a clean slate and we'll make this an opt-in process, and we want you to put checkboxes next to everything you want to share. Nothing has changed. Everything's still out in the open, and you still have to go in and figure out what everything means and how you want to share it.
That's true. And for the three of us, maybe that's not a huge deal because we're aware of what the changes have happened, and we're aware of the controversy, and we have a familiarity with Facebook, so we know where to go and look for this stuff. You shouldn't have to go look for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And now, and as far as the Facebook stuff goes, like I said, with their opt-out and stuff. And I think I just lost my point, too. Sorry, handling some technical stuff on the side here. But no, yeah, I'm someone who's like, well, okay, I expect it to be as open as Twitter. Not a problem for me. But for the average user, like, I'm sure, like, even something as technically savvy as even my wife has picked up on a lot of stuff. But, I don't think she has square one any of this stuff has happened. If you're not in the media, nothing. If you're not listening to the This Week in Techs and the Techzillas and whatever show or CNET or whatever, if you're not into that, you have no idea. And then this is more. How many general people do you know? My mom's on this. My mother-in-law is on this. All their families getting together on this. They don't know. I have no idea. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of feel like I've had this conversation a bunch of times as far as when I look at Facebook and Twitter and anything social media for that matter, like I see it as a business outlet. I see it as a reflection on myself. Yeah. It's my Google results for, from henceforth. So I do sculpt my experience, and I do, I'm careful about what I post online. And like, there are certain things about, say, my job or individuals that I won't post on Twitter because I know that it will be out there and it'll be public. But as much as I feel it should be kind of like public general knowledge, it's totally not, because we generally live in a sort of technology bubble as far as geeks are concerned. Like, as far as we're concerned, everybody's on Facebook and everybody knows how to use it. But that's completely not the case when you look at the numbers. And we're entering this new generation where people are suddenly very responsible for what used to be a completely anonymous experience. And instead of taking responsibility, a lot of people are getting up in arms and being surprised at the fact that when they posted that they cheated on their boyfriend on Facebook, that everybody can see it.
Yeah. Yep.
Whichever one of you guys mentioned the thing about your mother being on Facebook is probably the best measure of this, and the three of us probably are not. They're the ones. The people in my newsroom, most have started Facebook accounts initially because they wanted to access information for sources that people were writing about, and it's been very helpful. But the folks who are older than I am, and I'm 43 years old, which seems to be about the dividing line between people who accept this freely and people who are older than me looking like, what are these kids doing? I don't understand this. But I had this discussion over and over and over in this room, and those are the folks that you're concerned about. I think to a large degree. People who are younger than I am are a little more comfortable about sharing some of this information. And as Rob said, they are also a little more conscious in general about sort of editing themselves, not everyone certainly, but being aware that, okay, this is going to be available to everyone, and maybe I should not post this picture or not post this information or not say that I'm cheating on my boyfriend on Facebook because everyone's going to know. The people who are older look at that stuff and they don't get it, and they are very concerned. All these people who in my newsroom who have Facebook accounts are very concerned about. Everyone can see this, or who's going to be able to see this, and those are the folks that this stuff needs to be simplified for, because there's no reason they shouldn't enjoy this experience. I mean, Facebook potentially can be enjoyable and can be helpful, and it's helped me reconnect with a bunch of great folks that I haven't talked to for years. But when you have to wade through all this crap to be comfortable with the experience, you're going to turn people off. And even if you're just looking at this from a business standpoint, I would think that would be the last thing that Zuckerberg wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, looking at it on a business sense, like you said, the idea should be to nurture this new generation of users, people that are just getting onto Facebook, whether it be older folks or younger folks who are just, Facebook is one of those really cool things about the internet where you don't need to be a geek to understand it and to interact with it fully. But I feel that Facebook has almost approached it in kind of like a typical engineer sense, as far as we made it work, but we're not going to show you how to use it. You should just kind of know. And like the leaps and bounds you see with usability on the iPad, as far as, you're seeing cats and 99-year-old women use it. That's the sort of approach that creates a lifetime of happy customer experience, where it's so easy to use that you don't need to know anything about it. And that's the way that Facebook needs to approach this. And if they actually did it right, they would slam it out of the park, and they would be the social network from henceforth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
On that note, I don't want to go too long with Facebook. We already broke one of our cardinal rules. So real quick here, let me set this up. There is a certain clip I wanted to bring up. I was talking to everybody about beforehand. This is too priceless for us to pass up, to be quite honest. I'm sure many of you who do follow the news and everything have heard of Michael Arrington. There's a certain
and Rob
video.
laughs.
Yahoo CEO Carol Bartz tells Michael Arrington what she thinks of him. Here's a clip right here for those that haven't caught it, and I don't know who hasn't by now. But here we go, and I'm going to have to bleep this, I know. Some classic Robert Scoble laugh.
It takes a long time to even convince yourself what the hell to do. Something magical that the fine people of Yahoo are supposed to do in this short time. So fuck off.
I think we missed the part at the beginning where
That one I meant.
I think we missed the part at the beginning where she tells him that he runs a very small company in comparison.
Can I just say that Robert Scoble has the best laugh of all time?
Is that who that is?
That's who that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was confirmed on at least 2 different podcasts I listened to since this thing's come out last week.
I could recognize that laugh out of a crowd of 1,000 people.
Amazing. Well, on that note, that covers our news. Before we get into our discussion topic for today, I want to remind everybody of our sponsor. You probably saw at the beginning of the show, post-edit, of course. Audible.com. We got a special deal with them for listeners. We're, as with a lot of people, we're offering a free audiobook download, free 14-day trial to give you a chance to check out their service. And I've been doing this the Mayhem Show. I like when other shows do it. I like to give an Audible pick of the week. Now, I have one prepared. I don't know if anybody has anything off the top of the head they want to share, so maybe I can keep this in my back pocket. But I got one. Does anybody else have one? I don't know if anybody's doing the audio book thing here in our...
I haven't, no.
I am, but I haven't gotten into mine yet. I'm going to be doing the book that is the precursor to the movie about Facebook and Zuckerberg.
Oh, I've heard some good things about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't gotten into it. I am all about Seth Godin though, so I think your pick is good to go.
Well, I just finished Lynchpin a couple of weeks ago. I picked up on him. He was talking about the whole lizard brain concept on an interview, and I followed it up with his TED Talk about I think the same topic, and creating different. And maybe there's a couple TED Talks and interviews and speeches I got out of it. Fantastic book. If you ever wondered why you don't go for stuff, or there's a lot of great concepts in there about why you shouldn't settle for what you have in your line of work. And it's really got me thinking a lot of outside the box to kind of push the envelope of, thinking maybe my line of work is this, maybe it should be this kind of aspect to even, grow outside of where, I find myself in my career. But that's my take on it. There's a lot of different things to get out of it. So if you guys want to check that out, it's at audiblepodcast.com/Sorgatron Media. That works for all our podcasts. We're just kind of combining together, support the show. If you want to try that out, it's free. Seth Godin's actually the book I got in my free trial. That and Chris Brogan and Julian Smith's Trust Agents, which I gave as an Audible pick on Wrestling Mayhem show a few weeks back. Recommend all of those. So go check that out, audiblepodcast.com/Sorgatron Media, and support the show. Help us out. And trust me, you'll enjoy it. If you're listening to podcasts, it's like the easiest thing to transfer over to. It's like, if you're lucky, it's like an 8-hour podcast,
Yeah, definitely. I'm lucky enough to be able to listen to whatever's on my iPod while I'm at work, and it quickly evolved into listening to 40 hours of podcasts and audiobooks, and it's just makes the day go by faster, and it's amazing. And if you're a big fan of Seth Godin, his other book that I'm a huge fan of, which is basically his blog republished in book form, Small is the New Big, 193 Other Riffs, Rants, and Remarkable Business Ideas, is an amazing book. I'd say if you don't know who Seth is and you want to get an introduction to the kind of guy he is and the sort of ideas he pitches, check that book out. It'll blow your mind. Like it's the kind of thing you just want to keep going and going and going, but it's also in short segments. So if you need to stop at any time, it's very comfortable to pick back up on it.
Awesome. Yeah, one of my favorites that I picked up since I picked up audio books at the beginning of the year. So please check that out. So let's get right into it. The reason we have Uncle Crappy on hand is to talk about where his current profession is.
I don't know where my profession is.
Well, first,
I'm still working, so that part's good.
Exactly. Hey, it's working out for you, right? So,
right.
Like we mentioned, you work for a local newspaper here in the Western PA area, greater Pittsburgh area. And I've always wanted to bring up the conversation because I hear a lot of the talk about the Wall Street Journal and what they're doing, the New York Times, Boston, whatever, and how they've applied and how they're trying to figure out what do they do with this new medium to combat what it's doing to their current medium, quite frankly, with sales and just, kind of getting by, it feels like. So I wonder, what is the feeling around the newsroom for you, where you're at, first off?
The feeling around my newsroom is it's tough, although that has more to do with how our paper has contracted. Like most papers in the country. We've been through a couple rounds of layoffs, although it's been a while since we've had any. It means a lot more work for everybody. It means we have to do a lot more with, there's a wonderful cliche, do more with less. What we're finally starting to see, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, this comes from the owners of the very small chain that I work for, is that we are starting to grudgingly embrace a lot of the tools that have been available to all of you guys. Mm-hmm. And I think, particularly in the case of my paper, and Mike, I know I told you at the outset that I wasn't going to mention this, but I work for the Beaver County Times, and you know what we're doing is not a secret.
Way to mess up my intro, but thanks.
Yeah, that's right. Some of the things that we've been able to do so far are kind of paying some dividends. I think the paper our size is in a good position because we can offer something that you can't find elsewhere. You can find national and international news anywhere. You can't find local news without going to your local newspaper. Mm-hmm. You can, but it's difficult. And we are still the ones who are going to the school board meetings and covering the municipal meetings and going to fires and car wrecks and stuff. So I think we still have the content that people want to see. We have to adjust to use this. And this is a gradual process, but we have to adjust to start using some of the tools that people my age and younger expect us to use, and it's coming slowly.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've discussed in the past kind of the acceptance of that by your newsroom and everything. Can you talk a little, from my understand, I know you're big on embracing it. There's a few that others. Yeah. I think are people starting, overall to come over to the dark side, as it were. To get away from the dead tree industry, as I'm sure you've heard it all.
Yeah.
So
we're still killing trees every day.
How is that transition going? Are people just kind of being left in the wayside in the kind of its wake?
There are a couple points here. Number one, and let me speak very broadly. The industry I work in is not accustomed to and is actually fearful of the two-way street that social media requires. Mm-hmm. We have been very accustomed for years and years and years to providing this information, and it goes out to you. The people who are especially involved may send us letters to the editor back. But that was really, other than cranky phone calls, that's really the only interaction we get. And again, speaking very, very broadly, we like it that way. Folks who have been in the industry for a long time are uncomfortable with the notion that they're going to get instantaneous feedback, whether it's a comment on the newspaper's website, whether it's someone responding on Twitter, whether it's a comment someone leaves on a Facebook page. That's probably the biggest adjustment besides actual technical stuff. In my newsroom, there is some of that. There has also been. It's also been pretty refreshing how some people have embraced this. I've been on Twitter for a long time. Personally, I started the newspaper's Twitter account, which is at BC Times. I have a work account at Michael D. Pound, and we've had a couple other people who have started Twitter accounts. One guy who I thought was pretty smart in doing this. Is like, I don't want anyone else starting a Twitter account in my name. So he opened a Twitter account that has never once used it. But, I'll give him credit for at least being aware and being there. Our political guy started up kind of grudgingly, but has embraced it and uses it a lot. Not just for newspaper stuff, but he is talking with other people. He's talking with politicians who are on Twitter. He's talking with other political writers. He's talking with readers too. I've been really impressed with what he's done. The newspaper also has a Facebook. What are they called now? They're not pages. And they're not fans. It's a Facebook thing that people like.
Fan
I don't know
pages,
what it is now. Likes,
dislikes. I don't know. I know they fan this to like this. So I'm confused now.
I don't think they're fans anymore. I think they just like us.
It's my page. It's your Facebook page.
Okay.
As opposed to a profile, I think is what the rest of us have. I don't know. It changes as often as their damn privacy settings. And there's another group that says change it back to 3 times ago, and it's just I can't keep up. As he takes a swig,
I've been encouraged with the reaction in small ways, and overall because of prodding of the people who own us. I think you're going to see more stuff from my paper, and you're going to see more stuff across the industry. We gingerly try to figure out what works, what our readers want and expect us to do, and then how we react to that, which is kind of a complicated thing, as I mentioned before.
Now, a big thing as you started there, and as people may have seen in the preview, the fantastic picture from which you've embraced YouTube with the media break, which I don't see too many. Maybe I'm just not where I'm looking here in the area, but I don't see too many newspaper places taking on video like you have.
That was something we've been doing that for a long time. Maybe 6 years, maybe a little bit longer.
Wow.
Someone in the newsroom got an idea that we should be doing a daily webcast. Initially, it was as much as a promotional tool as it was a news delivery vehicle. Although I try to do both. Somewhere along, my involvement with that was purely accidental. The woman who had been doing it is much better looking than I am. She was on a long maternity leave. A couple other people were on vacation, and someone said, "Hey, Mike, can you do this?" And I just, "Oh, sure." I have since co-opted Newsbreak completely to my own purposes. And we occasionally do newsy stuff. Occasionally, I will do something that I try to have a little fun with. I do a weekend thing every Thursday. And it's fun, and it gets a decent, a small but decent response. It's a relatively easy thing to do. I have there's a guy who works in our interactive media department who does video spots for advertisers, does some news related stuff. He does a weekend show with entertainment editor. So I don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. I write it and I read it and I wear silly hats and that's pretty much what I do. He occasionally jokingly refers to me as the talent, which always strikes me as hysterical because there isn't a whole lot of talent involved. But we try to have fun with it.
Excellent. You ever think you'd be doing video when you were sitting in your journalism classes?
No. In fact, at some point about 2 years ago, we had a couple of journalism classes, communications classes from the local Penn State campus come through the newsroom, and they stopped in right as we were filming Newsbreak. And the thing that I told those kids was, I know, when I was in school, I took a news writing and editing sequence in the journalism school. I expected to be writing, and that's what I do, and that's still important. But I said, do everything else. Learn how to shoot, write for, edit video. Learn how to record and write for and edit audio, to make sure you can take pictures and compose them well, and make sure you can edit them. Know how to do all this stuff, because when you guys are 5 or 10 years into your career, the reporter who can only sit at a computer and write isn't going to have a job. And if you can do everything, you're going to be in a much better position than I was when I started my career, because that kind of stuff and having all of those skills, being able to do everything, is going to make you a lot more attractive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's that's definitely a more modern look. I know there are a lot of kids who there are kids who go into graphic design thinking they're only going to be making websites for the rest of their life, and they need to realize they need to round off their skills as the pool of employment gets much bigger and bigger, and that applies even more so to J school and kids that are learning about journalism. And they're running up against a brick wall because they didn't realize that they had to do more than just write it. And now you need to know how to write and interact and like you said, capture the full story in all these different kinds of media that you will present yourself with. And the ones that are fully capable of doing it, they're folks like you who are doing things like the media break, and the people who are falling behind aren't that talented, I guess.
I know.
It's not. There are an awful lot of smart, talented people in my business. I think more of it has to do with their willingness to embrace this stuff. And as I said, there are still a lot of people who view this with skepticism or even outright fear, because it is so different from what journalism was and what journalism has been for their entire careers. The cool thing is, and I have this one example that I told you about our political writer and what he was doing. What he was doing on Twitter, he started griping to me a couple months ago about the fact that he doesn't have a place to send people when he's posting links. Something will come up in PA politics. He has to send them elsewhere because we did not have a place. And I said, a blog on our website would be great. And there are other newspapers in our chain that have a half a dozen blogs or so. And we started talking and we started pushing. And this has resulted in the political guy who's just getting his started. It's with having a political blog. It's resulted in me starting up a beer blog, again, for the Times, from the Times website, which is timesonline.com. And our entertainment writer has started one as well. These are all... and this was, I'm especially proud of this because this isn't something that I thought of. This is a guy who, actually has a master's degree in journalism, and he's about my age, but he has really embraced this. And this is the kind of stuff, this isn't going to single-handedly save the industry, but this is the kind of stuff that I think can help a lot. It can help JD reach a lot more readers. It brings traffic back to our website, which makes all the suits happy. And I can do the same thing in my limited scope there. Our entertainment editor can do the same thing there. It's nice that people in my business are starting to think about this stuff, because it's only going to help as we go down the line.
Excellent. Well, one thing I wanted to bring up, we talked a little bit again about what guys like the Wall Street Journal and everything were doing. One of the big things is the Kindles and the iPads and everything. You say you've had some experience on the iPad. What do you think of it as, like, maybe, I don't know if you can call it a replacement platform, but I guess like an alternative for your delivery?
I haven't played much.
Mm-hmm.
I've had about 45 minutes, and what my impression in that very short period of time is that I think that's something, if you can tailor an application to that device, I think that's a very cool thing. You've mentioned the Wall Street Journal and you've mentioned the New York Times at a couple points, and I think those are the giants of the industry. For my purposes, it's better to look at the Ann Arbor News and the newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin, whose name I don't recall, that have both. The newspaper in Madison went online exclusively. They cut their print edition. Ann Arbor, I think, publishes a print edition twice a week, maybe on Thursdays and on Sundays. Everything else is online. And I mentioned before, we have to. I think we still have relevant content. We have to think about how that information is delivered. That's our commodity, and that's how we deliver the stuff is what needs to be changed, or what will be changed in the future. I love the iPad, again, in my very limited experience, but I think that has excellent potential for being a way to deliver this the commodity that we have, the information, to our readers. It's still very early in the process, and I know Rob has had a lot more time to play with an iPad than I have.
I actually have mine in my hand at the moment.
Bite me.
Hold that up. Hold that up. I do have you on an alternative video. I might be editing in if you want to do
it. Okay. Yeah, there's that's Godfinger is what I've got up right now, which I'm sickly addicted to.
And then I think that's a perfect example of the competition of newspapers on such a device.
Yeah.
But I do have, let's see, I can actually pull up the New York Times Editor's Choice, which I think is a fantastic example of, old school media doing an amazing job of taking advantage of full interaction with these new sort of devices. Let me hold that up there. So you can see there's all the stories, full media, all the photos are fully interactive. They'll bring up the stories and you can flip through. It's like that. But anyway, Yeah, my thing about the iPad, I've actually from talking to people and showing this thing off, I've probably sold at least 10 iPads in the process, because it's just that amazing, and it's something that a lot of people talk about, but you don't really get it until you have it in your hands.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true.
Oh yeah.
I've talked on length with people saying, it does this and it does that. A coworker of mine was thinking about getting a Kindle for his wife, and I was like, well, maybe it would make more sense for her to get this. And I talked about it for maybe 2 hours, and he was like, okay, I'll think about it. And I brought it in the next day, and he had it in his hands for all of 10 minutes before he decided he was going to buy her one. But as far as old media taking advantage of things like this, I think it's going to be absolutely crucial as we start to degrade the metaphor of the computer and turn it into just that sort of third device that sits between your mobile device, as far as your cell phone or your smartphone, and your laptop or your computer, and it becomes just a part of your life, just sort of an intrinsic device that is with you at all times, and it's how you will consume most of your content, if not all of it. I've seen a lot of news organizations really do a good job, like the New York Times, but I've also seen a lot of news organizations sort of fumble with it.
Like who?
Let's see if I have one on here that's actually kind of. There's a lot of smaller papers that are trying. Yeah, even USA Today is not very pretty, and their usability is kind of horrible. They basically took a web page and shoved it on the device, which is not really going to impress anybody.
It's not the point of it.
Yeah, it's not the point of it. The point of it is to take full advantage of everything this is capable of the interactivity, of the video playback, of the beautiful screen, of the multi-touch interface. That's where you're really going to see things sort of meld away, and that's where you're going to attract new users. If you talk to some of the smaller papers, you can almost hear in their plan that they're sort of panicking. Like they have footing and they have an audience. They just really have no clue how to approach this sort of this new advancement in media, things like the iPad and all the tablets that are going to come after it. I even talked to a friend of mine writes for Hearst. He's one of he's their media manager or something very important. And he was talking to me about things they wanted in an app, and he's been in meetings with the New York Times, I believe, as well as several executives from Adobe, and even they have no clue what to do with this thing. They're still kind of, everybody really wants to just sit on their hands, wait until somebody really, really, really does a great job, and then copy bits and pieces from whatever succeeds.
It's kind of like everybody that says, well, I need a Twitter account. Okay, now what? Yeah, exactly. They get the account and they don't know what to do with it, so they develop an app and they shove their publication on it, but they don't know how to push it further. Yeah, and that's where the biggest problem is. How many iPhone apps have you downloaded? I think all of us are iPhone users here. It's pretty much a glorified RSS feed. It's like I could have put a shortcut on my phone for this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there've been plenty of times where instead of downloading the app, I just put a shortcut to the website on my home screen because it was better.
To be briefly defensive, sometimes this is for papers of my size, and we are a small chain, about a half dozen newspapers and a couple of small market TV stations. Sometimes this is a question of resources, which this day and age are a lot more scarce than they were 5 years ago. I don't know a whole lot about its development. I know my company is looking at iPhone apps. We've gotten that far at least. And to their credit, it sounds like they are looking at doing something more than just an RSS feed. They want something to be done well. Now, I haven't seen what this is going to look like yet. I have no idea when it's going to be ready. But the money is an issue. There's no question. In terms of why USA Today can't put up a good-looking iPhone or iPad application, I'd have to think they've got all the resources in the world, and if a news outlet, news organization of that size cannot make it work, they're not paying attention, or they're not trying.
I think with the larger organizations, you could definitely see this when the beginning of the media bust, you can call it, started to happen. Is a question of changing a template that they've been riding on for, sometimes over 100 years. Yeah. As far as, just using old media, and it goes back to that question. And we emerged into the internet, and then the publishing industry fell, and then what happened with the iPad, like when the iPad came out, I felt that this was an amazing thing. I feel that the iPad, I won't say that the iPad single-handedly saved anything, but I will say that the iPad will stand in history as a representation of a device that turned publishing on its head and had everybody thinking about changing that 200-year-old paradigm that they had been sitting on, and finally
it
giving
absolutely
into the
has that
process.
potential.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think that's a great wrapping point. We're running into our time for our other productions.
Other productions?
There are other productions that may have existed for a while. But hey, a great conversation. This is everything I could have hoped for our first episode. Mike, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this little experiment here.
Guys, thank you both. This was a blast, and I will come back anytime you want me to.
Excellent. Be sure to check him out. Your blog is unclecrappy.com, which I don't think we brought up much, to be honest.
That's okay.
But go check it out. Go check it out.
Yeah.
Timesonline.com, I believe, is your paper site, since we're allowed to talk about it now. And, of course, Rob, where are you at? Where can people find you?
Where can people find me? They can find me on the Twitters, probably, at ROBJDLC.
Excellent. And I'm Sorgatron. Oh, that's almost the right graphic. Working on that. I actually changed my name halfway through this. You can find me at Sorgatron on the Twitters as well. Sorgatronmedia.com for all this stuff. And there's all kinds of stuff linked there. So I guess with that, thank you. First episode of the AwesomeCast. There will be plenty more. Join us next week. We're going to be recording 7 p.m. Eastern. Just go to sorgatronmedia.com. We have an awesomecast.com that just went up, and we'll be working on that. We have at AwesomeCast as well. Oh, I have graphics for that too. Look at that. There we go. There's that website.
Look at that.
It's a new setup for a new show. I'm still trying to figure out where all these buttons go. So, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next week.